Well, let's bring you back to our top story now. The Northern California wildfire, known as the Camp Fire, is now the deadliest in the state's history. And it's not the only one that's still blazing. Thousands are still displaced from their homes, and some will have nothing to come back to. Entire towns have been burnt to ash, and more areas are still threatened in both the north and the south. New, smaller fires have also sprung up, fed by strong winds. Well, let's get some more on this. And to do that, I'm going to speak to Stefan Doerr. He's a geography professor at Swansea University, and he specialises in wildfires. And he's actually at a wildfire conference right now in Portugal. Good morning, Professor Doerr. Thank you very much for joining us on the programme this morning. Now, I want to put to you the fact that California's governor has said that these very destructive wildfires are the new abnormal. That's his quote. Do you think we should be preparing ourselves for bigger, more destructive wildfires? And why might that be?
Well, the short answer is yes. Fires are normal in California, but what we've seen recently is relatively extreme. And what's been shown over the last few decades is that the fire season has been extended in California. So we basically have periods, longer periods in the year where we can expect extreme fire. And this is exactly what's happening at the moment.
What's changed to make that the case?
What's changed is basically that the average temperatures have risen, rainfall has fallen in some areas, and there's also less snow in the winter, which keeps the soils drier when the snow melts, and therefore we have longer conditions during which fires can burn. Now, put this together with the extreme drought we had over this summer and very strong winds, any ignition source can then ignite the surrounding vegetation and cause these fires.
How difficult are these fires to tackle, to put out?
Well, they're almost impossible to put out. What is possible is to evacuate people. What is possible is to perhaps save some properties, but at great cost. But ultimately, once fires burn under those extreme fire conditions, there's essentially very little you can do.
This is obviously not a problem that's limited to California. We've seen enormous fires this year in Greece, in Portugal, in Europe. What should we be looking at to try and tackle globally these sorts of fires, which do seem to be increasing in number and in destructivity?
Well, what really we should be looking at is how we interact with fire, because we're building more and more in areas that are highly flammable. For example, the town of Paradise in California, if you have a look at that, there are trees everywhere. Trees are lining the streets, trees are surrounding the houses, and of course these pine trees are very flammable under these extreme conditions we have seen this summer, this autumn, I mean, and the same has happened in Greece this summer. We had nearly 100 people died in a relatively small area in a small town, Mati, that was essentially covered by trees. So what we really should be doing is removing the flammable vegetation from the buildings and keep the forest at the edges or away from the edges, really, of towns. And this will really save many lives in the future.
And just very, very briefly, how big a part does climate change have to play in all of this?
Climate change certainly plays a role. As I said, California, it's been demonstrated that climate change has increased fires. The same is true for Canada. And globally speaking, if we have warmer temperatures, we certainly have longer conditions and drier conditions under which fires can occur. So yes, climate change will increase, particularly the ferocity of fire, not necessarily where fires are burning in every place, but certainly the ferocities and therefore the risks to lives.
All right, thank you very much, Stefan Doerr from Swansea University. Thanks for speaking to us. Now, the United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has called for all sides in the Middle East conflict to exercise